The recording is about to start.
All right. Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the February 14th, 2023 meeting of the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area.
Did you say February 14th?
13th. Close enough.
Just checking.
Do we want to do a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Board Chair Bess Campbell,
Present.
Vice Chair McNeil,
Present.
Board Member Dembowski,
Here.
Board Member Perry,
Here.
Board Member Zorns,
Here.
Board Member Srebnick, and Board Member Mead. Okay, we have quorum.
All right. Oh. All right. Moving on here. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment today?
We did not receive public comment prior to the meeting, and we have one member of the public present. Wish to make comment at this time, please use the raise hand feature and I will unmute you and let you provide your comment. No public comment at this time.
Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda. Anybody have anything that they would like to add, amend, or otherwise? Okay, I would entertain a motion on the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve our consent agenda as written. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And abstentions? Okay. Moving on to business item, action item number 1. Consideration of agreements A23-01, Public Works Contract for North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area, Health and Wellness Center Roof and HVAC Upgrades, and A23-02, Public Works Contract for North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area, Senior Center Building Upgrades with CDK Construction. Whew.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and just give a little bit of a background and some context of where we are. There's been a lot that's happened in the last few months that we haven't been meeting. And so before I turn it over to Christine to talk about the specific details, get us all oriented on what we've been doing. So it has been some time since your last meeting in November. And just a reminder, in that last meeting in November, you as the board, we did one-on-ones with most of you to discuss what you would like to see for the 2023 budget and the capital repairs plan. And so you provided us a lot of feedback on that. The one-on-ones were also great. You asked us to make some changes to our meetings, if we could move our action items up front and be very clear about what you need to do in your precious time here tonight. So that is why we want to make it really clear. We're asking for an action tonight from you, and that is to approve the contracts if you should like to do so for this work in 2023. So just some reminders, those projects that you approved are some really big ones for 2023. So if you remember, we're about in the middle of our levy. And the CIP report that you were emailed kind of talks about some of the smaller projects that have been ticked off in the first couple of years. And you can see that on that list. Did some flooring replacements, some water heater replacements, some bathroom drain repairs, and then the bigger pedestrian bridge. Those are done. Now you're in the middle of the levy, and in 2023, you've got some really big projects ahead of you. So since November, you asked this staff to work on the Health and Wellness Center projects, and we'll go over those in just a minute, and some big ones for the Senior Center. So since November, there's been a lot of work happening, everything from finalizing some permits, getting the rest of the documents done, getting those bids ready to go out. And we are now ready to present you with some information on those bids and ask for your feedback on a few things. Next slide, please. So just some reminders, these are the big ones. You've got the Health and Wellness Center roof replacement, HVAC. You also asked us to think about the foundation investigation. And then we have the North Shore Senior Center, also roof replacement, HVAC replacement, envelope repair, which again is just the outside of that building, and the interior trim repair. So I just want to talk a little bit before I turn over to Christine and just let you know that we've had a lot of conversation about these projects, and it is not easy. We are so grateful for many of you that give us great feedback on these. As these costs from these bids came in, they were a little higher than what we predicted and what we told you in November. That's pretty standard right now. We've talked to our counterparts. We're trying to figure out how to adjust to that. There's not too much we can do, but we do know that that's probably pretty frustrating to see these projects come in at a higher cost than what we were expecting. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine with that to give you a little bit more details on how these bid processes went.
Thanks, Becky. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I just want to quickly go over our bids. So at the Health and Wellness Center, as Becky stated, we had a bid opening for roof and HVAC project on January 5th of this year. We received 2 bids at the for the Health and Wellness Center projects, with CDK being the lowest responsive bidder at 1.3 million, a little over 1.3 million here. So our projected start date on this project is June 2023, and the projected end date is October 2023. Just as a reminder to the board, the original budgeted items for both combined projects was about 3.5 million. So I just want you guys to keep that in your mind as we're going through these bids. So next slide, please. So we also had a public bid for the senior center upgrade projects. The original bid date was November 30th, and we've received 2 bids. The bids were higher than we anticipated, and we rejected all bids and rebid the project with alternates to potentially have more options, scope, and budget-wise. So at the rebid, the base, so we pulled these, we basically took the 2, the scope apart. So the base bid is only the roof and HVAC, and the alternate one is the envelope of the building that we talked about. So the exterior of the building. We had 3 bids come in. CDK was deemed the low responsive bidder. And the project start date here is March 2023, and the projected end date is September 2023. Next slide, please. So as we're looking at the scope, so what we're really here to talk about is the scope of the senior center project. Our bids that came in at the Health and Wellness Center were pretty on point, and we accepted that HVAC and roof replacement project. So the senior center building has 2 possible scopes outlined previously, and we wanted to show you on this slide, especially the contingency amounts for this. So the base bid for the base bid for the senior center came in at about 1.5 million. With the contingencies, we're looking at about a little under $1.7 million with contingencies. That's at a 10%. And then the base bid, which we kept at a 10% for the alternate, which includes the envelope, we have a 20% contingency tied to that because it's a little bit more risky with the envelope. Once you open it up, you never know what you're going to find. So we went with the higher contingency on that. So that's about $280K on that contingency, which puts this project at 2.4 million, just over 2.4 million. So moving forward, you'll see the scopes with the base bid is option A, and then the base bid with the alternate, which is the envelope included, will be an option B. So next slide. So option A, we have the Health and Wellness Center with the 10% contingency at about 1.5 million. And then we have the Senior Center with a 10% contingency, which is at 1.6 million. So total with contingencies is $1.2 million. This is just, let me reiterate, this is option A is just the HVAC and the roof for both buildings.
Christine, can I jump in
Christine,
really
there's a
quick?
message in the chat. Can you describe the envelope a little
I was
bit
going to say,
better
could
to
you
the
describe
board?
what the envelope is, please?
Yes, so the envelope includes any siding repair, downspouts, basically exterior window trim repair, painting. So it's just everything that is going to keep the building watertight.
I need to ask a question. Go ahead. So, Christine, this is James.
Yes.
Is there a defined scope of work on what will be done on the envelope?
Yes, correct. It's the scope of work is in the contract documents that we attach to the agenda packet.
Okay, so is there a way to show that to us real quick? Because I don't have my packet in front of me here.
Okay.
I think she can share. Okay.
So this is really this scope right here is for the envelope.
And so is it the 200? This is for the senior center,
Correct.
correct? Okay, and this is for the 280,000.
This is for the work that is, so the base bid that came out, the bids that came out for the senior center, alternate one is $635,000 without contingencies for the envelope.
Okay, so this one's 635. Okay,
Correct.
and so just so that I'm clear, for the 635, they're going to replace all of the exterior building trim.
Correct.
They're going to repair and replace windows.
Correct.
Is there a defined scope of the number of windows that they're going to replace?
There, I believe we have an allowance of for the replacement. We have allowance of 4 windows to be replaced in the original contract.
Okay, so they've said that the 4 windows are bad, right?
Correct. And then we'll
Okay.
go in if needed, if more we can do, there would be a change order if we needed to replace more windows.
Okay, so the 4 windows that need to be replaced that have been identified as replaced, who identified those 4 windows as needing to be replaced?
Cornerstone, we did a walk through the building, the interior and the exterior of the building. Correct.
Fabulous. So Cornerstone did an inspection, and based on that inspection, they identified 4 windows that were failing.
Correct.
Correct? So I'm assuming based on that inspection, there should be no other windows that need to be replaced.
Yes. Hopefully,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. I want to make sure in my mind, I'm kind of understanding the contingency portion and where this can and cannot go. So, so then we move to replacement of siding and painting the entire exterior. Is that correct?
Correct.
So did they identify areas of siding that are deteriorated that need to be replaced?
Correct. Yes. There's replacement of siding. Yeah, that's here. And there were specific areas definitely that we identified during the walkthrough that need to be completely replaced.
Okay. And so I apologize as a board member, I may not have seen it, but there typically is an envelope report, correct?
I believe there was a report done, correct? Let me see. I believe we do have a report that was done by Cornerstone.
Okay, so
I don't know if that, sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't believe we shared that with the board, but yes, there was a report that was done.
Okay, so for me, I would be, as a board member, I'd be curious to see what that report actually says in context to what is deteriorated, what is bad. And the reason I say that is because it also would help us to understand what could potentially be a future contingency issue or a change order issue. By at least seeing that report, right? For me, being in the industry, I just, I won't speak for the other board members, but I would like to see that report to kind of go through and understand how they came up with what needed to be replaced, and what potentially could be something that may need to be replaced later. So not that we want to paint over something because we didn't see it at the time, but then when we start tearing things apart, then we find more damage underneath.
Yeah, I totally, we can get that report to you, but I just want to make it very clear that sorry, what these questions are coming up and I don't know, where is this? Sorry, we're getting acclimated to doing these on Teams and I'm like, where is the chat? Okay, here we go. Chat.
My question was just there for after James's question is answered. I'm just putting that there so it's a placeholder later.
Oh, I see. So this is kind of pertains Councilman Perry to what I was going to say in response was that the various other scopes mean that they're going to basically they're going to deliver a watertight building. And so whatever it is that they find, that is the end goal, is to make sure that the building is watertight.
Okay, so they're going to deliver a watertight building for $635,000.
Correct.
So we're not going to get a change order.
That's a trick question. That's a trick question.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, as you know, we're not going to be able to know until we open the building up of any potential rot that's in the wood there at that building, in the siding, within maybe even the studs of the building. So that's why we have such a high contingency
Yeah, and
allocated for that.
This Christine, I want everybody who's listening right now just to understand this has nothing to do with you or anybody else on this call. But I've been in this industry for 30 years. I'm actually certified in ICRC water damage restoration and certification for restoration of buildings. And what concerns me is not the work that we're doing here. What concerns me is the pricing that we currently have and knowing the facility. And I would be concerned that we open up a $635,000 contract that turns into $1.2, $1.4, $1.5 million. And I just want to, again, I'm having a conversation, talking it out loud because I do this for a living every day. And it seems like there's an envelope report that we should have that could clearly point out some of the issues that we have and where they are. And then we can flag that as where we could potentially have other issues that they have not caught or identified, that then would allow us to get a more in-line budget put together for this scope of work. Because the last thing I'd want to do is open it up for $650, have a problem paying for it, then have more money that we have to allocate towards it. To me, it just seems a little messier. So I'm trying to be a little proactive with it and ask a few questions up front so that we can get in line with what the budget could potentially be if it goes over the 635. Which I believe it firmly will be over 635, based on the age of the building and the condition.
Okay. Yep, we can definitely get that report to you all and talk that through. Okay, so
Can I follow up? This is Rod.
yeah.
James, first of all, thank you. Really great questions and interesting topics. And I didn't do the work, but I litigated a building envelope case. With experts. And it brings shivers to me because what Councilmember McNeil is saying is like, what is behind the siding, it can get very expensive very quickly. And one of the things that I remember learning in the case was the capacity of experts to do moisture probing, which is basically non-destructive, but they probe into the walls. And I wonder, I'd like to see this report, but I wonder if they did any moisture probing, because it sounded like there was some siding identified that pretty clearly is, if I was reading what you were saying, failing. Yeah. And if you got failing siding, usually you got maybe failing stuff behind that. And moisture probing can tell a little bit and might give you a clue as to maybe a little invasive inspection that we might want to take that next step before signing a $600,000 bid that is a $1.6 million job. Anyway, maybe the report will answer that, but I'd be curious to know about that.
Okay, yep, we can definitely look into that. And if we haven't done it, we can consider it.
Thank you. Just to follow up, it looked like the contractor you chose was the lowest responsive bidder on both sides. Was there any savings in kind of like mobilization costs and things like that? Because we chose, if we were to go with the same contractor for both of them, did we get any efficiency?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we could have some saving costs, but because the HVAC repairs and replacement aren't being done at the same time, we don't have a lot of cost savings that way. The mobilization and bringing the cranes in, that is where there would be huge cost savings. But because we have not procured the HVAC units for the Health and Wellness Center, which is another reason why we really need to make sure we can get at least that contract up and going today, so that we can have our potential contractor procure those. We're at probably like a 16-week lead time on those units. As you remember, for the senior center project, the HVAC project, we were able to procure those units. So, yep.
Okay. Thank you so much. By the way, I can report to you from world headquarters here that the carpet is beautiful. The place, it looks great. It looks really nice.
Thank you.
So that's positive.
Yeah.
And the painted bridge, from what I could see of it, looked pretty good too.
Yeah. Good. All right. Barbara, can we get us back on track with the slides, please, ma'am?
I think there was a couple questions in the chat as well, wasn't there?
I believe, let's see, Councilmember Perry, I answered your question, correct, about the various scope?
I think here, seeing the report will answer that, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And then I think that there's another one after.
Great question.
Findings for the work. I don't know what that.
Oh, I think Councilmember Zorns is referring to the report as well, correct? Okay. All right. We'll get that.
One more clarifying question. Is the building envelope, is that the add-on option? So
That
tonight
is-
before us, can we approve the roof and HVAC work pending additional info on the add-on? Is that something we can do? Okay.
Yep. Okay. So here we are. So no envelope. So that's option A. And so we're at about 3.2 million with contingencies. And we just did those 10% contingencies, which is pretty standard. So we can move forward now, sorry. And then we're here at option B, which is the health and wellness, roof and HVAC. We have the senior center, 10% contingency on the roof and HVAC and 20% on the envelope. Total with contingencies just under 4 million.
So What was I looking at when I saw that it was $1 million over what we had expected it to be?
There's a graph with red lines, I think.
Yep, so Barbara's gonna go into that next.
That one, that
I'll
thing,
hand it over
yes.
to Barbara.
Make it go
Segue.
away.
Yeah, the terrifying
would be
graph
it.
here.
That would be it.
Okay,
So
so this
Barbara,
graph,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Barbara. So can we go back one slide real quick?
yeah, sure. Whoops.
So when we talk about the 3.973 within contingencies, right? We've identified the scope of work for the 1.5 and the well, the 2.4 includes the envelope, the 20%. That's option B, right?
Correct.
So we're just doing the 10% roof and HVAC part of that 2.4 in option A.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So in all of the, if we were to approve option A today, is that work, what type of contract would that work be under? Would it be under a GMAX, cost plus? What type of contract would it be?
It's a public works contract.
Okay, so can you, so a public works contract, is it a guaranteed max price contract or is it a cost plus contract? What is the definition of the contract? I know it's public works, but is there a?
Right, so on the contract, there is a number, which is, they have to do the number within their bid unless, and they can't go over that number without doing a change order. So we put the contingencies on there, so they don't have that contingency number. They, on the contract that you all will approve is just their bid number.
Okay, so if I'm understanding it correctly, that would, to me, would tell me that it's a GMAX, meaning we don't see the invoices or anything. We have a $1 million contract, and when they're done with the scope of work that's outlined, we have paid $1 million, unless there's a change order which we approve along the way.
Well, the way that we have it in our contract, in our bid contract, is that we do a weekly walkthrough with the contractor, and we get invoiced monthly, but we're able to check work as they're going along. And so we will get invoices routinely through the work, but we're doing up until final substantial completion, and then we'll do a full walkthrough. And if we're happy, then we pay the final invoices. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the terms that you have, the contract terms that I've always worked in public works realm, so we don't have like that terminology.
That's understandable, and I don't know, Becky, if you know the answer to that, but a guarantee GMAX means guaranteed maximum price. It means you set out a contract, you have a clearly defined scope of work of what's going to be complete, and you have a price that's guaranteed to not go above that for that scope of work. The only time it could increase is if you have a change order for additional scope of work. Yep. So at the end of the project, they have to provide an HVAC system 100% working to our satisfaction. When you talk about paying invoices along the way, that's called progressive invoicing, right? It means you're paying as you go.
Sorry, did they cut out or is it me?
No, I think they cut out.
So it
Oh.
sounds like to me by that definition that it is GMAX. If that's the definition that he's using for GMAX, it sounds like that's what we are doing.
Yep.
They cut out and they disappeared entirely.
Yeah. Do we want to wait for them for a few minutes to see if they can get on, or?
Yeah, I think we should. Since he's the guy with the chops who knows anything about this from the board standpoint.
Oh, there they go. Hi. We can't hear you.
We see you. Can't hear you. Unless are you speaking? Can't hear you.
Are they muted? No, they're not.
Rod, hold up 3 fingers if you can hear me. Say something. We can't hear you.
Oh, no.
I can't see them either. I just see Nathan.
I see them. We can't hear them.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Can't hear them now.
There's sound. I see something there. Oh, he's calling. Okay. Charades.
Oh, power surge. They
Okay.
had a power surge.
What happens when you have so many powerful people in a room? It just happens.
There we go. Now we hear you. Now we hear you. We just needed a little humor. Thank you, Councilmember Beth Campbell.
That was amazing. That was awesome.
Rachel for the win.
We did, Rachel
That's
for
it.
the
All
win.
right,
We
meeting
did-
adjourned. We're done. No.
I think we're expanding the scope of work for a new power service. or something, you know what I mean?
We'll
And
add a
I don't
power
want to
strip.
take. Yeah.
Well, it must
So
be
I
a
did hear,
rolling-
Becky, I did hear you say GMAX, right?
We were just saying that the way you described the contracting process for GMAX, like it sounds like that's what Christine will be using.
Okay, that's fabulous. That to me gives us some security, and knowing it's not just a cost plus, and every time you walk with the contractor, the cost goes up. So that answered my question. So thank you for allowing me to ask it.
The contract now.
You're looking it up? Okay.
This must be a rolling power surge because it kicked Robbie off. He's in Seattle. And then it came your way.
Okay, so now let's talk about this terrifying graph. So this graph shows, based on the projected start and end dates of these two projects and assuming progressive billing, but not assuming that we go over the costs we've described to you. So the price quoted in the contract plus either a 10 or 20% contingency to allow for change orders as those come in. We have sort of this cash flow forecast for the remainder of 2023. Option A shows without the envelope, we will deplete our general fund reserves in September. And we will go into about $55,000 of the King County interfund loan that we took out last year. That's not going to accrue any debt. It's really just a line of credit because the next month we start getting our tax revenue for sort of the second big chunk of money that we get every year. And we will completely pay off all of the money that we borrow from the line of credit actually by mid-November. And we will end the year with about $350,000 in our general fund. That leaves at our sort of lowest point about $950,000 of excess capacity in our loan that we can use for any reactive maintenance or any additional costs that come up along the way. Option B, which is including the envelope, has us depleting our general reserves in August. And in September, we go down to $817,000 of our King County loan capacity, which leaves less than $200,000 of wiggle room for any additional change orders that we might have in excess of the contingencies we've planned for, and then also any reactive maintenance that we need to do. Even with our second round of tax revenue that comes in October, November, we will not be able to completely pay off that deficit. We'll end the year, based on these projections, about $400,000 in debt. We would not pay that back in full until April or May of 2024, depending on exactly when we get invoiced the expenses that we're expecting in Q1 of 2024. So we would have funds by the summer, but that will complicate sort of project startup in 2024, as I'll kind of go over that a little bit on the next slide. But are there any questions about this graph before we move on?
I don't see any hands raised. You can probably go ahead,
Okay.
get rid of this ugly thing.
Yeah. All right. So Sorry, the dog's here. Go away, Lou. All right, so this slide shows the pros and cons of proceeding with option B. So the first pro is that we will have a visible deliverable meeting voter expectations. That's sort of a nice way of saying that we're going to have a shiny new building envelope, and that's going to look really good to our voters. But on the other hand, to accomplish this, we're going to seriously deplete our cash reserves and start accruing debt that's going to linger around with us into next year. The second pro is reduced impact of tenant programming, because we're getting all of the big projects at the two buildings done in 1 year. So we're not going to have to worry about remobilization. We're not going to have to worry about the laydown area or any sort of things that are go along with construction interfering with what the senior center is doing. But on the flip side of that, we're not going to have funds to cover any emergency repair costs. So if something goes catastrophically wrong in either of the buildings, we're not going to be in a position financially to make that repair. The last pro we've listed here is that the design work is already completed. Because we had to go out to public bid for these projects, we had to have Cornerstone produce 100% drawings for the base bid and the alternate. So the design work for this portion of the building is already completely done. But whenever we enter into this contract with CDK, we're going to be under an obligation to have them complete whatever scope we approve and then to pay for it. So if we say go ahead and do the building envelope, we're going to be paying for the building envelope, even if that goes in excess of sort of the money we have budgeted.
Barbara,
Member
Jeannie has
Zorn.
a question. Are you okay with the question? Go ahead, Jeannie.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, there's a 200,000 buffer if something goes catastrophic on the loan. Is that right? That's
Yeah,
left.
so if I go back to this slide, we are going to have a little under $200,000 of wiggle room. So if something really bad happens between the beginning of the year and then September, October, when we start getting our revenue again, we're going to have about $200,000 that we could use to fix that. If it's a problem that's going to cost more than $200,000 to fix, there are ways of addressing that. Technically, we can exceed this $1 million capacity, but as soon as we cross over this thick gray line, we start accruing interest on our debt.
Okay.
And I think that's something we really want to avoid if possible.
Okay, so my dad used to chastise me for thinking about what if and tell me to focus on what is happening instead of what if. But I'm trying to think, what would be considered catastrophic that would have over a $200,000 price tag on it, realistically? I mean, I thought a fire, what are some catastrophic things that would happen, and at what point would insurance step in? If a hot water tank were to go out, that wouldn't be $200,000. So what would be within our scope of responsibility of something catastrophic happening, as an example, that would have a larger than $200,000 price tag to it?
Well, Christine
Is our,
can speak
is our
more to this,
litigator in the room?
Well, there's that.
Christine can
think
speak more to
Councilmember
this, but
Zorn's
just
asking a good question.
offhandedly, we've just been informed that we might need to look at replacing the boiler in the Health and Wellness Center, as an example.
So that
So-
has come up, and we're investigating that now. But if something, Councilmember Zorns, to answer your question, it could be a sewer line that breaks. It could be a water line that breaks. It could be anything that would have a effect on any of our capital, what we call capital assets. I think I replaced a boiler in a building the size of the Health and Wellness, and we're looking at probably over $100,000, probably 150 or so, with all the all the components that go along with it. So, yeah, we would be pushing it.
And those
With
are,
a buffer that is that small for two buildings the size they are, for anything could happen at any time. And it would, as a, I guess, responsible property owner, and for us to have a tenant in the building and we're responsible for capital assets, 200,000 really would be the minimum, I would say,
yeah,
that we should have in reserve.
yeah, those are good examples, and I'm getting a little twitchy over the examples that you're giving, especially since the boiler is already on our radar.
Yes.
So we're kind of walking in to cross that $200,000 line. Our eyes are wide open and we ought not to act surprised if the boiler fails. Because you've already gotten an indication that it has some problems. So, I'll be looking forward to hearing what other people or how they weigh in on this. And thank you for those examples.
So did this include any of the investigation into that crawl space? As we're talking about a waterproof barrier of the envelope. And I know that there was some standing water down there, and I know that water seeps up in terms of studs. So is that included in part of this contingency, or is this another one of those mystery charges that may come up?
Nope, the envelope is on the senior center building and the crawl space investigation repair is on the health and wellness building.
Is it?
So
Okay,
two
thank you.
separate buildings. Yep.
Okay.
And we're still on that crawl space. We're still in the middle of that investigation. So I don't have any report there yet.
And if we were to separate out envelope repair versus option A, which is just HVAC and roof, would we have to go back out to bid for envelope repairs next year? Or would this contract, would they hold it for us? Or do we have to go through bidding all over again?
I think that if we move forward with the envelope, we might be able to piece it out and use our already established job program. So that might be where we're able to move. We have the design, we have everything, so we could just move forward with piecing it out next year and doing using our job program. So there would be no wait, no public bid. We would just go over scope with our contractor, and then of course he gets estimates from his subcontractors, and then we'll move forward with the option that's best for us.
And Christine, the city permits can hold over as well, correctly? I hope.
Yep, I believe the
Okay.
holdover for that is, well, there's no permits pertaining
okay.
to the, because it's just general maintenance
For the
for
envelope.
the
Okay, good.
envelope, correct. All right, any other questions about that?
I don't see
Okay.
any more hands.
Okay, I think next slide, we're moving into.
Just real quick,
You're-
Christine, if you don't mind, hopefully. I just want to make sure. So we've been talking to Nathan in the senior center a lot, and I just want to make sure that we've really captured the senior center's feedback for the pros and cons for those options. So Nathan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything else you'd like to add, or we really tried to capture your feedback, but I want to make sure we did that.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, Becky. I don't think I really have anything to add. From our perspective, I'm eager to try and contain the disruption to programming.
Yeah.
And so that's something I'm very cognizant of. I also am worried about, we already postponed these projects for 1 year. So we're already a year later than we thought we'd be. I worry about postponing the most visible element of the project 1 more year. At the same time, I think the concerns raised on the con side are also important to keep an eye on, because there's some unknown. It gets us close to the line on the money. So
Thank you.
thanks, Becky.
So on that note, my concern is cost overruns and how do we manage those cost overruns? So can you walk me through a process of how as an example, we have a contingency on the HVAC system. But if I heard you correctly, Cornerstone did a very detailed scope of work, right? So who manages that scope of work to ensure that they're adhering to it, CDK is adhering to it, and that we don't have to recognize the contingency?
It's a partnership between me and Cornerstone. So we will both be managing the scope and also the deliverables on a weekly basis. So it's really a partnership. Our consultant Andre, he will be on site and weekly doing inspections. I will be on site pretty much daily during construction. So we'll be there to manage, and hopefully our hopes is not to have, I mean, even on the we hopefully won't have any use or change orders on the HVAC and roof replacements. That is what we foresee. They're pretty straightforward. Really the biggest risk that we had factored was the envelope.
Okay, so but we did carry a 10% contingency on the roof and the HVAC.
We did, and I just did that just as protocol. It's just usually what, for budgeting purposes, you never want to hit that line, but I don't foresee using that at all if we don't need to. And we'll make sure that we're pushing against the contractor to make sure that they're walking the line and holding them to the scope in the contract.
Okay, so do you have an example of what could potentially cause that scope of work that's clearly defined by Cornerstone to have a use of the contingency? Is there anything you can identify that would cause that?
Yeah, the only thing that I could imagine would be either for HVAC, something electrical that we come across with installing the units, or possible in the roof, possible repair to the substructure of the roof that we can't see just from looking at it. So those would be the only things that I could foresee coming up. But I think those are pretty standard. We can't see what we don't know. So yeah, those are the only things that I would foresee ever coming up, is an electrical, something unforeseen electrical, or a repair that we need to make with the installation, or of the HVAC units, or the subroof.
Okay. Thank you.
Rod with a question?
Go right ahead.
Thanks. Did I hear you mention that we have a consultant who would be working with you on the project?
Cornerstone, we have a contract with them. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're not okay. I thought it was a consultant maybe advising us, representing the owner.
No.
Okay, I misunderstood what you were saying.
So
Cornerstone is the construction company, right?
No, so CDK is the construction company, and Cornerstone is our architectural contractor.
Oh, okay.
So they operate as a project manager. They manage the scope.
Through construction.
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
They do represent the owner, us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so Cornerstone is our project manager. Is that correct? They're doing CA work, construction administration work, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. I maybe just confused Cornerstone and CDK.
CDK.
Yeah, they're two different companies, I think.
Yeah, did this chart show CDK?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
No. Okay, so I think it's time for us to move to the next slide. And I'll hand it back over to Chair Bess Campbell.
Okay, so we've gone through option A, option B. The only difference being option B includes the envelope with the 20% contingency. So we've seen the graph that shows what the debt load would be, and the likely amount of time it would take to repay the loan, but it also discusses sort of our limited capacity if we were to go to the full amount of option B. Before we actually get into discussion on this, I actually had a question. If we were to do A, and by some miracle, we would need no contingencies on both of those programs. By October of 2023, both of those projects would be completed. How soon could we go out for the JOC for siding repair, painting, windows, etc.? How soon could we utilize the funds if we don't use that 10% contingency?
We can go at any time. It would just be me making a phone call to set up the walk, and then we could, me and Nathan and Cornerstone would walk with Forma, who is our contractor with the JOC contract, JOC contracting, sorry, mouthful. Yeah, it's just a phone call.
Okay, so I mean, if all things work out, which, let's hope, it is possible that we could move forward on some of the envelope after, again, assuming the best case scenario. That's not to say that it wouldn't get done or that won't get done, but if there's a possibility that we could get some of it started and completed, even if we pick option A. That doesn't mean it won't be completed by October. We could start something, right?
We could. My concerns with that would be we would be entering our rainy season, and opening an envelope in the rainy season is probably not the best option. But I don't know if there are things we can definitely, when we get there, ask those questions and see where we are weather-wise, and see how we can make this big scope into smaller scopes. And we could get completed what we can while the weather's still good at the time. Yeah, we can definitely consider that.
So we've got two options in front of us. I'll put it out to the board. What are the further questions that you have? Concerns, discussion options, ideas for alternates? I'm happy to entertain any and all thoughts on this.
I had a question around the envelope.
Please go ahead.
If we open up the envelope and we find a bunch of dry rot, do we have insurance coverage for that?
It's a question for me.
Yeah, that is. It's our tenant.
I'd have to look and get back to you.
That is a heavily litigated
Yeah.
question around whether or not it qualifies as collapse under a standard building policy. And older policies had a little more room if the damage occurred back then, but the insurance companies lost a bunch of claims and they tightened up their language to say collapse means an actual falling down of the building. So it's harder now, but there's been a lot of litigation on that. I would just say, James, from my experience doing that work, it's hard to get coverage for rot, for decay in a building. It takes favorable policy language and expensive lawyers. It might just be better to pay it, depending on how bad it is.
Yeah, our insurance program is part of a state pooled insurance program for nonprofit organizations. So it's an amalgamation of different providers. I can take a look at it though and see what I find.
Yeah, maybe something that, depending on what we run into when we open it up.
Yeah,
it may help with the contingent. I mean, for me, it goes back to full scope, understanding the full scope of things. And I think I heard tonight another thing brought up, which was I think a boiler was brought up as a potential issue that we may have to pay for in the near future. And that raises the question, if we're doing the work on the HVAC system and we're not doing that work now, will that work that we do on the new HVAC system have an impact on the work that we're not doing now? And how does that all flush out? And could that potentially push us over the contingency? So it's, for me, it's kind of, you know, I like to put all the pieces together, understand the full system, the full envelope, whether, you know, when you talk about envelope, to me, the roof is part of the envelope as well. You know, you're watertight from the top down. And the same thing applies when you put an HVAC system on a roof. What's underneath that HVAC system is part of that envelope as well, right? So I just want to make sure that we're looking at things in a totality and how they're going to work together. I always talk about maintenance and long-term maintenance and what's going to be required. The last thing I want to do is fix an HVAC system, and then 6 months later, now all of a sudden our boilers are broken, and then we're in a critical mass again. So I just want to make sure that we would talk through that as well, because I did hear that. I believe I heard that come up today.
Ms. Campbell, I can speak to that briefly if it'd be helpful.
Please do.
Christine mentioned the boiler earlier. The boiler is part of the hydronic system. The hydronic system and the control system and the HVAC system, or the air supply system, kind of work together in the health and wellness buildings. So that hydronic system the boiler is attached to is also at the end of its useful life, but it's not part of the package for the HVAC replacement. So we know we have to replace it at some point soon, but it's not in this scope of project. So it's on the horizon either way. Hopefully it's not emergent, but it's definitely coming at us soon.
Do we have a cost for it?
No.
We don't.
Christine, I apologize. Is that?
No, that's, yeah, correct. And so the HVAC project that's at the Health and Wellness Center is replacing all and adding air handler units. So that is the scope of work for the health and wellness. And the reason we took that route, and just I guess just to explain that the scope was considered before either me or Nathan were here. So the scope was to add the air handler units with the thought that the natural ventilation system that is installed now in that building does not function properly with the controls or the hydronic loop system, the boiler system. It is, they work against each other almost. And so adding the air handler units will help that system work more effectively. And so that's why we went that route. I believe it was more about value engineering and hopefully saving cost when the scope was, I guess, manifested.
And that's only on that building. It's not on this facility here.
Correct. That is only for the health and wellness building.
This building is blissfully simple compared
yes,
to the
it's a lot simpler.
The
building is definitely simpler.
This building's HVAC system also at its end of its life, correct? Yeah.
Which we are replacing. So.
Yeah, I'm just the one piece that's not being replaced is the piece that always comes back to bite you right down the road. That you're not, now we're extending ourselves out. We're extending how much we have. We're leveraging everything we've got. We run into an issue, then that becomes an issue a year down the road. If we don't have anything, it becomes a much bigger problem. So I just want to make sure we've at least talked through that piece of it. Not that we can solve the problem tonight, but at least it's on record that we're talking about the concern, right? Because it is going to become a concern. All right, that's all I had for now.
Does anyone else have comments, concerns?
I'm sorry, I just had one more question on the kind of the chart that's making us shudder. And that is, what happens in 2025? How much revenue comes in there? How quickly would we turn back to flat or positive color. We get an April collection and a October
It's about,
collection.
it's
Yeah, I
usually
can
about
answer this without pulling the chart up. We don't have to look at it.
Okay.
So
Thank
we
you.
have about $1.5 million of tax revenue every year. We get that in two big chunks, one in April and May and one in October and November. At the end of April, May of 2024, we'll have about, I think, $200,000 to $300,000 in our general fund that we'll have recovered to. And then we'll bring in another $750,000 in October, November, and then a final $1.5 million of revenue in 2025. So we're looking at we have about 2.6 million of revenues and reserves for 2024 and 2025. But out of that, we have to pay administrative services, insurance, any capital repair projects that we want to do. I have a rough cash flow for the next 2 years. Let me just pull that up on my end so I can make sure I'm telling you everything accurately. And if you want, board members, we can clean this up and get something out to you that sort of shows these projections.
And while you're doing that, Barbara, when you said final in 2025, does our special levy end in 2025?
Yes, so our levy expires at the end of 2025 right now. And once that happens, the NPRSA's sole source of revenue will be the contributions that the 5 member agencies agreed to pay as part of the ILA. That totals to $16,000 a year, which is not a lot. So this is why we need to sort of, in addition to finishing out our capital repairs that we want to do, we need to think about building reserves, and we need to think about any future levies that we want to try to pass, so that we continue having revenue that we can use to support and maintain these facilities. But
Chair Vescano, can I jump in to get the discussion started?
Absolutely, go right
All
ahead.
right, I'm sorry to go first, but I'm comfortable with voting to approve option A tonight. If I had my druthers, I would also do the add-on and get going on the building envelope repair. But I'm just, there's a couple of yellow/red flags. One, I'd like to see the envelope study report that James thoughtfully requested to just get a little more information. Two, the dipping into red and pretty deep red is a concern that Councilmember Zorns pointed out. But I guess maybe this final fact that we're reminded that the 2025 is our last year of revenue, like there isn't any more after that. That really that is telling me maybe to get a little bit more information about the building envelope before biting off on it right now. Like maybe in the next couple of meetings we could get there. But I'm just, if other members feel strongly and there's other reasons I get operationally, that would be my big one. Like we're out here, like let's get it done. I'm still hoping we can get it done in the same mobilization. I think I would like to take, before voting to do that, maybe one more meeting with a little more info, if we can get it, to see if we have any more visibility on the scope of the issue. Because I agree with James, there's a high likelihood that there's real problems at a building of this age, especially if there's identified rot on the outside, that 20% goes pretty quickly. That's right. And I really don't want to run out of money. That would be a really, really bad thing. Yeah. So that's kind of my sense. If folks are, the other of you are all are brighter and have done more of this and are ready to go with B, I'll go along, but that's my thinking. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Councilmember Zorns, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, but as I've listened to this conversation, I'm a little nervous about option B. And One question I had is the 4 windows that need replacing, are they sporadically around the building or are they weather facing on one level? Is there anything that you can tell us about is there a pattern with the 4 windows that need replacing or not?
I believe 2 of the windows are in the, what are we calling it? The gymnasium, the multiple use purpose room. Is that,
Multipurpose room.
sorry, is that correct?
Called the multipurpose room.
Multipurpose room. And
Yeah.
then there is 2 other windows. I can't remember. I think one on north and one on the south facing, Nathan, that we've identified that need replacement.
I'm not sure which, I'm
I
not
think
sure which
south
floor.
definitely. Yeah. I believe
Okay.
one on north and one on the south end.
Okay, and the multi-purpose, what wall does that face? Is that,
The,
is that south, east?
That's
the windows are east facing.
east.
Okay, because that kind of tells me 3 of those windows, if I'm assuming the weather pattern that you get is the same pattern that I get just the next half hill over. So that tells me they're getting inundated by weather. I guess I'm concerned that once we go into those windows, are we going to find extensive rot repair that needs to be done? And would that be grounds for saying that we need to push a new levy for once if we do option A and then start poking around for what it's going to take for the envelope, we may be able to go to the public and give them a better idea of what it's going to cost. I'm just expecting that there's going to be more there than what we have slated for the envelope. And I mean, it's one thing to cover up rot and hope that but I don't think anybody responsible would do that. So the building is how old now? 20, 30 years old?
92, so 31 years.
Yeah, so it's seen a few winters. I guess I'm a little more inclined to just do option A and not be so risky to do option B. But if someone can push a sale for option B, I'm listening to it.
I'll jump in on the option A bandwagon. I think part of this levy is showing how responsible we can be with the money that we have. The interfund loan is a really great option for us, and unfortunately we'll need it even to do option A. But we will have money coming in the next year from tax revenues, so we can get this finished. But I think this, to the point of showing our voters what we've been doing, I think this shows a responsible approach, that we're not biting off more than we can chew, that we're being really cognizant of cost overruns. Everyone knows how expensive construction is, and water damage is a really big deal up here. I have great concerns about, again, opening up a can of dry rot or wet rot or whatever other house of horrors we can find, and being in this horrible position of identifying a problem and not being able to fix it. So I think that though it's not the best option, I think it's the option that gives us the most flexibility in terms of doing each portion of this the right way, so that if we do need to go back out for a levy, we can point to sort of the fiscal responsibility that we have held ourselves to. And I think that the public would be, I think, much happier with us going with option A and being very measured and moving forward. And, Nathan, I know that this is hard on the senior center. This is a lot of work that we're doing, and we had delays and there's been COVID. It's just been one thing after the other. But I think that, with the thoughts that I've heard this evening, this is the option that makes sense for us. And it makes the most financial sense for the NPRSA. And, we're still here to keep this moving forward. So if anybody else would like to add on, or if anybody wants to advocate for option B, I haven't heard that yet, but if anybody would like to, please feel free.
So I'm leaning towards option A as well. However, I wanted to ask Nathan, from a sequencing point of view, for the interruption that will take place, doing it separated, how can we manage that for you? Are we going to be able to manage it? So if you do the HVAC, you do the roofs, that's a big scope of work. And then we come back and we find out we open up some areas less intrusive, right? But then we find out it's major, then we can kind of close things back up and not dive into it. Is that a good game? Does that work for you in keeping you guys programming?
I mean, I've been talking to Christine recently. I think managing the impacts on the center, and we've talked about just involving Cornerstone and Christine and me a little bit more closely as we manage these projects so that we can be super responsive as we get new information and we can kind of manage the day-to-day impacts as they come along. I think will be how we do it. If we have to do lay down and mobilization in 2 separate years, that's not the end of the world. It's just kind of managing it together. That's the best we can. If we end up doing the envelope in 2024, that there's a silver lining there is we can dress that up as a final project of the levy, and that's a really good kind of visible thing to kind of end up with.
Okay. And then if we find out we need to extend it, that's great. I would say that in kind of hearing Nathan, I think what's going to be important to me doing option A is in moving forward on any project that we do is ensuring that the senior center itself, that Nathan is heavily involved in whichever project that we do moving forward, so that the center has part of, I guess they're part of the process the whole way through, so that we can foresee any issues they may have in programming to keep them open and operational, I guess. So I think that would be part of my ask, is that we can do that.
Have Nathan on the walkthroughs,
Yeah.
meetings with the contractors, if you're willing.
If time permits, I just think it's important that you're part of it, because it's an impact to you, and I want us to get to the final stage where you're feeling a part of this, and what's the day-to-day. So
okay.
I mean, that's just my opinion, but I'll let the other board members speak.
I think it's a great idea. Nathan, if you don't mind walking around and listening to exciting conversations about repairs and timing, I think that's a great idea. I think the more information is more better. And if everybody understands what the expectations are and what the inconveniences are, they're all important considerations. I mean, we're not ever given perfect options and perfect solutions. We're trying to make the best of what we can do here. So I appreciate that everybody is a willing partner and everybody is coming to the table with a little bit of an understanding that we're never going to get to perfect. We're going to get to good enough here, but we will make it good, I promise. And that's why we're all here. That's the importance of this project. So, more information is it flows in all directions. So I think that there should always be an understanding that we're here to listen, but we're also here to act on what you tell us.
I really love that Nathan would be there. I think I learned I was executive director at the first opening of Eastside Housing in Avondale, which is now Springboard Alliance and became part of HopeLink, but it was HopeLink Friends of Youth and Catholic Community Services. And we had a project manager, and it was, we bonded it and the whole thing. And there was so much learning in that experience, and to be able to take that and apply it as I was walking through and talking with different folks in real time, it made an immeasurable difference to have somebody carry that thread all the way through and across a bunch of different conversations. So I think it's wholly valuable. Unfortunately, it still stays with me, and it's
Well, it sounds like we just had a whole bunch of agreement there. So since we all seem to be in agreement about our path forward, would anybody like to attempt a motion?
I can read.
All right.
Councilor Dombrowski moves to approve agreement A 2301 and agreement A 2302 as presented. That's option A, as described by the staff, who, in making the motion, I want to thank for their terrific work and explaining this all in detail. Really appreciate you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Dombowski and a second from Councilmember Zorns. Would the maker of motion like to say anything else?
Nope.
All right. Anybody else have anything extra to say?
I would just like
Just
to
one-
echo the appreciation to everyone who's worked so hard on bringing this forward to us. Thank you.
I want to echo that same appreciation. I know it's very difficult to go through, to be in the minutia of it, only to show up to tell us all about it after you've sent us everything, and to have us ask 17 questions about one particular thing, and to keep a straight face and not, and to just be right there with us. So I appreciate the patience. I've been there, and I know it's just a lot of really hard work. So thank you for everything you're doing to make it a terrific space.
Yeah, I was going to add, after the Super Bowl game, I was like, I don't know if I can use this phrase, but you guys are rock stars. Thank you.
All right, so we've had a motion and a second to enter into contract with CDK Construction to replace the Health and Wellness Center roof and HVAC system and the North Shore Senior Center roof and HVAC system, option A. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Option A is the way forward. Okay, on to discussion items. I believe that this is the discussion of requests for proposals for siting of the Youth Excellence Center. I don't know who is going to be giving this presentation, so whoever would like to take it, run with it.
I can open the conversation and just give a little bit of an update on NPRSA board action and staff action on it. And then hopefully we can have some more updates potentially from Councilmember Dombowski. But yeah, so last year, you may remember the NPRSA board asked staff to do some work so that the NPRSA board could accept these grant funds from King County in the amount of about $330,000 to do some needs assessment, a site analysis, and some work on this youth community center. And so staff's been working really hard, talking to a couple of folks at King County. And towards the end of the year, the NPRSA signed some documents, and with the help of Councilmember Dombowski's staff, helped us, send those to the right department. And so, but I think we are all unsure of what the next steps are. There's some questions, I think, about how those grant funds can actually be used. And so, Councilmember Dombowski, I don't know if you have any new updates. It sounds like King County Parks gave y'all an update. So if you have anything to share, that might be helpful.
Yes, I can. So we did I think 325,000 or so.
Yes.
Gosh, it's been a couple of budgets ago now, and it's been there, and that was bonded money. And so the county has some rules around that. It has to be used for capital projects, right? Capital kind of work. That would usually include things like design and scoping for a project. Once you get a little further afield from that, say for citing feasibility studies, I think they start to get a little more conservative. In our last budget here, the 24-25 budget, I put in another 750,000, again, capital, but maybe with a little more flexibility. We, Councilmember Best Campbell, our board chair or president, I'm not sure of the title here, she signed on November 15th the contract that our folks prepared and said, here's what we need. I just learned today, I confess, that the county hasn't signed the contract 3 months later. I know our guy Butch was sick and out of the office for a fair bit, but I also understand now that he is now saying they want for the 325 grand for us to have maybe site control. Well, I have to tell you, I'm very frustrated. That's not in the contract as I read it. The exhibit that was attached said it's for the feasibility work. And that's all they wanted then. So we are in current communications with them about the 325, but also the new 750. our performance strategy and budget office, which will be administering the new 750,000, I'll call the additional money, is telling us that that may be much more flexible and deployable sooner. But to say that this council member is a little frustrated is an understatement. And I reached out to Executive Constantine, Deputy County Executive tonight. I wasn't able to connect with her. We're going to talk probably tomorrow. But I think we have a bureaucratic logjam here that is holding up some funds. I'm confident they will come. But in the meantime, Councilor McNeil has done a bunch of work to bring a working board together, to bring a consultant, with some schematics and some early ideas on. I have talked to James and I said, look, we need to talk to you all on the staff and the lawyers. We probably need to do some sort of RFP or request for qualifications or some sort of open process for the money to hire the consultant. Maybe it's this person in this group that you've been working with. Maybe we don't have to, but that's an open issue. But that's kind of my update. It's front and center on my mind, and I'm a little frustrated with the delay, but I'm optimistic in that James has been moving forward to bring forward leaders on the actual work. So that's what I can tell you. James, what would you say?
I think for right now, the big piece is the RFP piece needs to go out so that we can get that process started to actually hire that consultant to do that work. So having the funds in allowed us to do that. While we don't have the funds in now, I'm optimistic that we'll get those funds, but we at least need to get that RFP process started. I have spoken with Becky, and I think there might be some collaboration that we need to do on how to write that RFP and sending it out. So maybe our staff at NPRSA can reach out to your staff and figure out what needs to be written, how it needs to be written, and get that process out and started. Okay. So that when we do have the funds in, then we can get right to work on it.
Councilmember Dembowski?
Yes.
Can I ask a clarifying question around that money? There's money that is for capital expenses, which would be construction and such. There's also a need in a capital effort to have a feasibility study and sometimes a site study. My understanding is that King County they recognize site study, choosing a site, which you don't need because you've already got it. That site study is an applicable use for capital money, but that a feasibility study is not, which I challenge because you don't do a feasibility study unless you have a capital need. One does not exist without the other. And I have always seen feasibility study and only seen feasibility study associated with capital campaigns in the 50 million I raised in capital campaigns in my career. So it was very confusing to me that that King County would not support a feasibility study funding for King County Search and Rescue as well. They would not allow that money to be used in that same way. So there's an interpretation, legally, there's an interpretation about feasibility studies that I don't think is accurate. I don't think it accurately reflects an understanding of what it does. Are you talking about not receiving funding for a feasibility study from capital funds?
Well, I think Councilor Perry, you put your finger on kind of the issue. And I think that I'm not sure we need to, I think we can scope the work. I think we can scope our way out of this dilemma on this particular thing. James, I don't know that we need a feasibility. We need a site assessment, right? It's site feasibility, right? Can you build it? Not
Site
as
study,
the project
right.
needs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Site assessment, site placement, scoping the building.
Designing of the building.
Designing the building,
Yes.
yeah, but you're right. That the county gets hung up a little bit on that. And I feel that's what we've fallen into a little bit on this 325, which is out of the youth and amateur sports grant fund, which has its own set of rules.
I see.
50 I put in the last budget is not in that program, and therefore we think we have more flexibility there. So it's just
Okay.
a great capital grant from our budget, and PSB is, our performance strategy budget office is telling us that. So, and we
Right.
have, James has identified, 3 potential sites that could work, and so that's, but it's a bit, we couldn't, if site control is what our department wants, obviously we don't have that, and we're not gonna have that. It's too early.
Got to do design.
Yeah.
Becky, go ahead.
So I just want to go back to the earlier suggestion that we start the RFP or the RFQ process now. We can do that, but as our staff, thinks about that internally and we work with King County staff, it's going to be really difficult for us to finalize that process unless we know exactly what the grant requirements are. And so just to give you an example, as we were working through this the last few months with King County, we were really asking a lot of questions about, is that a reimbursable grant? Is it invoicing schedule? Or is it, how does that work? We have to know a lot of those grant requirements before we can publish the final RFP or RFQ. So I think we can get started on it, but I honestly don't see how we could publish that without knowing that we have the grant funds. But I could be wrong on that. I'd love to hear feedback
No,
from
I agree
the
with
staff
that.
or.
I
Okay.
agree with that. I think that there's some other parts of the RFP or request for qualification that could be put together,
That's a great
what we're
idea.
talking about, where it is. But then we do need answers. Is it a reimburse on billing? Is it a lump sum up front? What is the scope that'll be funded? My vision in securing this money was that it would be transferred to a fellow government, the NPRSA, and we would administer, that we wouldn't have kind of
Sure.
the long hands of the county, but so far, I might be able to do that on the 750, but on the 325, which is
Okay.
From a special program, we might have to push that a little bit. So.
And I will say King County Parks has been really great. I just want to say they've been very creative. They've, from what I understand and how they've been speaking with staff about it, really trying to help all of us get what we want. And so, because I didn't want us to get hung up on the terminology, if we're describing a feasibility assessment and that's not the same thing as a site assessment, they've been really open with us and trying to help us get you what you want. So kudos to them. But if we need to shift gears and start working with a different agency or a different point of contact, we'll just be in close coordination so that we know exactly who that is so we can move forward.
Well, I've now asked, I'm going to be personally involved. This has gone on for too many months with no action. And we don't have endless time in these offices. We gotta make stuff happen. So I will be convening a meeting. You are invited. County staff's invited, and we're going to see what it takes to get a check or a voucher or whatever we do to send money from one to the other so we can proceed, because the kids aren't getting any younger. They're aging out every year that goes by.
I just showed.
I know there's new
Right.
kids coming, but James's kids are aging out.
Well, the generation when we first had the conversation with the kids down at Wayne that were holding the fish
Yes.
are now 14 years old.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So.
I mean, if we had a contract signed today, it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years, right?
Take a couple years to build, but yeah.
But the project, I hope James will share with you some of the kind of early envisioning. It's pretty cool. And honestly, we chatted today, we're making good trouble. I'm a little, James is more optimistic on the size of this thing than I am, but I never want to doubt this man. But we'll see what we can do. But I think obviously there's a need. The other reason I really want to get going urgently is because we did a bunch of work. James ran the amendment in the Best Starts for Kids levy to have a capital grants program. We put in a letter, I think last December, of interest, but in March, they're going to open up the first round of grant funding for that. So those are dollars that I would like us to have a concept to be able to apply for, to get, to bring up here a piece of that. So there'll be several $1 million opening up in the center grant program that Councilmember McNeil pass the amendment on. It would be a frustrating shame if those dollars went by. And some of them didn't come to this project, because that was the point.
Yeah, and I would just, and thank you for that acknowledgement, but I would say that to me, when that passed, that amendment passed, to me, that was all of us saying that we're going to invest in future generations, period. The $50 million set aside, Best Starts for Kids, Youth Center, recreational, means that we're doing something here in King County for youth. We spend millions of dollars on all these other things. And the one thing that for me personally is ensuring that these kids have a safe space to recreate, to go educate, to get the needs that they currently have and keep them away from the social mental issues. And I think here at the NPRSA, we've been talking about this since I've been on the NPRSA. Rod's been doing the work. Councilmember Perry, I know Bill and I have had these conversations many, many times about the youth. It's nothing new. And we have the opportunity. We've put the work and the time in. We have right now, currently a 12-person board built for the youth center. Nathan, I'm happy to announce he's part of that board. We're going to have an inaugural board meeting on the 25th of this month. And it's happening. You know, we're going to make this happen, and we're just a small piece of it. It's a much bigger thing that's going to happen over time, but we cannot allow money going from this person to that person to get in the way of this happening and moving forward. We just can't. We have to find a way to speed up government when government takes so long to come to happen anyway. So I thank you all for your support, your dedication. You know, Becky, you probably remember on Tuesday night, I announced that I got a text message, and Councilmember Zorns, you know this, from my 6th grade teacher. And I want this message to resonate with each and every one of you. This man saved my life as a 6th grader. I was bullied every day. I was called the N-word every day. My sister's hair was burned. This man took the time to come to my house and saved my life by making me go back to school and confronting the person that had been doing this to me. And that changed my life, that I could protect myself. And those are the spaces that we're creating with this North Shore Youth Center. And if I have to tell that story out loud 100 times, I will. But this teacher on my 57th birthday took the time out of his day to text me to wish me a happy 57th birthday. That to me told me that what I'm doing right now is going to work, because that is the power of paying it forward. So I can't say it any differently. This is critically important right now and for future generations. So thank you for allowing me the time.
In the water, there's something in the water. This is going on in Carnation. It's going on Snoqualmie and in North Bend. People are paying attention, and it's time. There's inspiration and there's light around the youth. And today I went to a Snoqualmie Child Development Center that they're opening March 6th. And it's culturally relevant. It's the most gorgeous space I've ever seen in a childcare environment, and they're bringing in their elders and the youth, and it's for the members of the Snoqualmie tribe and the people that work at the casino next and the hotel next, and then for the families in the Snoqualmie Valley. It is so rich with promise and investment in our future, and that's what you're talking about here. And so I just think this is a wonderful, wonderful project, and I think the timing is good, and I think things are coalescing around this in general. So I'm hopeful. It all seems very positive.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I know that in our retreat past couple of weeks, the Bothell City Council has made it a priority. So it is one of our top priorities and goals is to see this thing through.
So as a logistical question, so we're talking about the 325,000 versus the 750,000. To my knowledge, I don't know if I've signed anything for receipt of 750,000. Is this a move that the board would need to make that happen if for some reason access to those funds would get the RFQ out faster? Is there some sort of logistical maneuvering we need to do tonight to facilitate that so we don't waste time, or are we still waiting to see how these conversations go with the parks and with the other grant administrators?
Councilmember Bascom, that is a great point. Would you entertain a similar motion like we offered last time, authorizing you to sign any contract for the 750 in case, so we don't have to wait for another meeting if that comes around?
So if the board would indulge, I would entertain a motion that would grant the board chair the authority to sign for and accept a grant from the county in the amount of $750,000 for the Youth Excellence Center.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so there's been a motion and a second to instruct the chair to sign for $750,000 for the Youth Excellence Grant. Would anybody like to speak to the motion who hasn't spoken?
I think it's an amazing opportunity. Again, thank everybody. And I hope that we can get this announced to the community, the work that we're doing on this relatively quickly so that they know publicly what we're doing. And I know we're recording this meeting. So I'm going to start spreading the word of the work that we're doing here.
And I just want to second all of the hard work that, everybody has been doing behind the scenes. It's finally time for you all to be recognized for the hard work and dedication that you've shown throughout the years. You've been planting these seeds and they're finally starting to germinate. So I don't want this logistical logjam to get in the way. I think that, this board is committed to supporting and helping in any way we can. I'll be very anxious to hear about your first board meeting, the inaugural board meeting, and of course, bring information back to us so that we can spread that word to our communities. But can we get some sort of an update, I guess, on if and when and how any potential monies would come in, and if we need to perhaps sequester that money into a separate account so that we don't intermingle it with anything from the senior center? Again, I want to make sure that we're keeping things separate that need to be separate and providing all of the paperwork to show where the money is gone. Is there any guidance that you can provide us from the county when you get it? Can you forward it to the board?
Sure, we can do that. That's another good suggestion, Chair Bess Campbell. Like in the past, we've set up our special accounts, and I think you made a suggestion, maybe staff could come back to us next time with a proposal to have separate capital and operating account for the North Shore Youth Excellence.
Yeah, nailed it.
We need a good acronym.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah, NPRSA staff has already talked through that in anticipation of receiving the grant funds. We've already kind of talked through what that needs to look like on our accounting books. Yeah, we just need the money.
Cash.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. If anyone has any more comments, please make them. If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And abstentions? All right, motion carries. I get to sign for another batch of money, which I'm honored to sign for $750,000 for this youth center. I've actually got some ideas and things that I'd like to share with you, James, at some point. Youth excellence comes in many forms, and there are some very basic things that I remember from my youth that were impactful that I think we could bring to this center and really make it a model, not just for the region, but even nationally. I think that there are some really great things that we can do. So I want to thank you and Councilmember Perry and Councilmember Nabowski for all the work that you've been doing on behalf of the youth. And, now it's coming to fruition. So it's time to really pull up our sleeves and show the public what we're made of. So thank you for all of that work. And of course, staff for somehow making sense of all the requests that we're making tonight. As always, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you. And reports. Nathan, I'm sure you were the first to give us a report.
Yeah, I'm up. I'll go quickly tonight. First of all, I just want to point out a couple of things. You can see the lovely carpet on camera from the NPRSA. You see these lovely chairs that were made possible with a some capital dollars from the Veterans Seniors Human Services Levy, which have made a huge difference. They're taller than our old chairs, so seniors can get in and out of them better.
I thought this meeting was easier to get through.
There's a lot going on here, a lot of things going on. But the one I want to talk about is actually the one you're looking at is through the new technology video conferencing centers we've been able to put in with some help. We wrote these video conferencing machines into our ARPA grant from King County, with the thought being, with a lot of seniors still in isolation and who have moved around, we wanted better hybrid meeting technology so that we can connect with people who are still at home or who can't come in. So we're putting this set up here in the senior center building, across the street in the health and wellness building, in our Kenmore location, and in our Mill Creek location. So we got a separate grant for Snohomish, some private dollars in Snohomish County to do that, so that we can connect our centers together and also connect to people outside the buildings. This is
We should
not,
be able to play bingo from home.
you cannot actually. That's a violation of the billing laws. That's, as I so well know.
Fix that one.
No video bingo. But one of the things this does is this will allow us to do meeting, like the camera can start, we can set it so it zooms in on who's talking. The room is mic'd, so it will focus on who's speaking. So you can actually have groups of people online and in a room interacting in a hybrid way. Really cool. So we've got buildings going, but we're also expanding our footprint online. So it's exciting to be able to do that and actually meet with people in the room and online.
Yeah.
So that's my report for tonight, and we're continuing to grow and get bigger. I just saw today we're up to 2,125 paid members right now, which is a huge jump up from last year. We're definitely on track to grow. We almost served 4,000 people last year. We'll blow through that number this year. So it's coming back.
Awesome report.
Short and sweet.
All right. Any other reports from from board members?
Chair Bess Campbell, I'm not sure this is a report, but maybe a point of personal privilege.
Go right ahead.
I wanted to share on this public forum, which is something I shared with Nathan before we started, and that was my immense gratitude for him being here, the way he is leading. You know, he had big shoes to fill in Brooke, Knight's path, who was just amazing. But boy, is he doing awesome. And I just, he inspires confidence, and he's present, and he's leading, and he's smart, and he's knowledgeable. And I just feel we are so blessed to have you here doing this work. And so thank you. Thank you very much.
It's an honor. Thank you.
No, it's an honor for us to have you. Thank you.
I'll echo that. It's always great to find someone who is really passionate about the work that they do, and it's the right person for the right job. And it's not really a job, it's more of a calling. So I appreciate that you put your, not just your time into it, but you genuinely care. And that's why we're all here, is because it's the people who matter. So your passion is infectious, and the Senior Center has a very excellent reputation because of your hard work. So thank you.
1,000%.
All right, is that it? Are we at the famous motion to adjourn? No, future meeting. Almost. March 15th. I assume that we will have some clarity around what the contract would look like for the $750,000.
That's the
We'll have a
Ides
little
of
bit-
March, Rachel. I don't know.
No, don't ever make a reference to the Ides of March. That is not auspicious, my friend.
A2, Rod.
Right, yeah, right.
I know, no. Let's not make that reference. But I assume we'll have a little bit more clarity from the county around funding and what this is going to look like, so we truly can start to move forward. I'm gonna keep all the fingers and toes crossed on that one. Oh, Christine seems to has a hand raised, so she's probably got answers.
Hi. Do we want to have an in-person meeting at some point?
Ooh. How does everybody feel about March at the Senior Center? All right.
The internet tells me the Ides of March was notable in Rome as a deadline for settling debts. So I guess the county better show up with some cash by the next meeting.
So you're going to have to be in person to bring us the bags of money.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Just bear with me 2 seconds. I am checking to make sure
It seems
that
like,
it's not spring break
oh, yeah.
or
That's
April.
April, isn't it? I think
Okay,
that's
yeah,
April.
we're good. We're good.
Can that be a hybrid meeting if we, like Nathan's saying, yes, okay.
All right, so I will confess, because I took over during COVID, I have never been to the Senior Center. So I am desperately looking forward to getting there early and getting a tour.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you.
Okay. Okay, with the future meeting identified at the senior center at 6:30 on March 15th, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This has been a really
Great to
productive
see you.
meeting. Thank you for all the hard work. And we look forward to seeing you in March.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Nicely done.